Unemployment is one of our greatest social problems. For example, it has been estimated that a 1-point increase in unemployment, when I say 1 point, 1 percentage point, say from 5% to 6%, that's a 1 percentage point increase, will lead to, on average, 920 suicides, 648 homicides, 20,240 heart attacks or strokes, 495 deaths from liver cirrhosis, 4,227 admissions to mental hospitals, 3,340 admissions to prisons. So, an enormous issue. And but in here we're not going to focus on that. That's probably the biggest problem with unemployment. Our focus in economics is how it affects the economy, how it affects output, productivity, that kind of thing. So, the dismal science, yes, that's right. Well, the first thing we're going to look at is how is the unemployment rate calculated? Well, the unemployment rate is simply the number of unemployed, number of people unemployed, divided by the number of people in the labor force. It's real simple, but we better define these terms. The labor force is anyone over 16, okay, 16 years of age. I should say 16 or over. Let me fix that, because that's age 16 or over, and who are employed or looking for work. Okay, so if you're employed, obviously you're part of the labor force. But if you're looking for work, you're part of the labor force. Now, if you're not looking for work, you're not part of the labor force. Yes, you're part of the population, but you're not part of the labor force. So are you a full-time student, for example? You're studying all the time, going to class all the time. You're not looking for work. You're not part of the labor force. Now, when you graduate or in the summer, when you're looking for work, you're part of the labor force. So, let's calculate that. Let's say, well, unemployment, oh boy, unemployment rate is number of unemployed divided by number of the labor force. And let's say that is, let's say the labor force is 100 people. And of those 100, 5 are unemployed. So you've got a 5% unemployment rate. Okay, 0.05, then multiply by 100 to convert to a percentage. And that's it. It's that simple to calculate. The arithmetic is simple. The finding the data is another matter. First of all, we had to determine that there were 100 people in the labor force. Well, what we have here is it looks like out of the 100, 95 are working, and 5 are looking for work. Now, how do we know 5 are looking for work? Because they say they're looking for work. That's it. They simply say they are. When the Bureau of Labor Statistics contacts their random sample that they do, they ask you if you've been working. If the answer is no, are you looking? If the answer is no, you're not part of the labor force. Okay, so it's difficult to get the data to measure. And among the difficulties, here are some issues that make it difficult. The first issue, problems getting data on unemployment. Okay. One is the discouraged worker. Discouraged workers. Discouraged workers are people who really do want a job, but they've been looking for a long time. So you call up, and so you've got, let's say, 5 out of 100. The unemployment rate is 5%. And Joe keeps saying, he's one of the 5. He keeps saying that he's looking for work, and he's not finding work. And then one time they contact him and they ask him, have you been working? No. Are you looking for work? No. What happens to the unemployment rate? Well, Joe is no longer part of the labor force. Therefore, he's not unemployed. So, Joe drops out of the labor force, so the labor force goes from 100 down to 99. He's not unemployed anymore, so there's only 4 unemployed now. So what does that do to the unemployment rate? Well, you've got the denominator, the numerator and the denominator going down by the same amount. And when that happens, the whole number falls. So you divide those and you see that's now 4.04%. So the unemployment rate, it falls. This is going to be the reported unemployment rate, 4.04%. And politicians are going to be crowing under my management. Look what we have accomplished. We have brought the unemployment rate down from 5% to 4.04%. Happy days, right? Well, no, because it's falling for the wrong reason. If you get enough discouraged workers, get enough people stop looking for work, you're going to look pretty good as a politician. And yeah, politics and economics, right? Always the clash, it seems. But anyway, discouraged workers are a big issue, and people do get discouraged, and they give up after a while, and they just don't feel like there's anything out there, and the unemployment numbers actually look better as a result. So the discouraged worker problem, it understates unemployment. This is the number we get. This is the real number. Okay. Well, another issue in collecting accurate data for unemployment is the underemployed. Underemployed. Oh boy, Well, let's say you're building rockets for NASA and you're smart and you're got a big bucks job and suddenly you're laid off. They're not building as many rockets anymore. And okay, so you're unemployed. So what happens? Okay, what happens? Here's the unemployment rate, 5%. And then they lay you off, okay, and you're looking for work. So the labor force is still 100. Now you're unemployed. So it used to be 5 out of those 100 were unemployed. Now you're laid off, and now the unemployment rate's gone up to 6%. But you decide while you're looking for a job, a real job, to your level of intellect and skills, you decide to go get a job at Wendy's. Little job at Wendy's, they give you a free lunch, let you have a free burger. So you figure, why not? I'm just sitting around. I'll go flip some burgers. So if they call you now, guess what? Are you working? Yeah. Hey, great. Yeah, I'm flipping burgers down at Wednesday. You can tell them the whole story all you want. But you know what? This is the unemployment rate. You're one of these. Well, you're one of these. You're not one of those. You're one of the 95 working instead of the 94. Okay? So you are working flipping burgers, and there's no difference between flipping burgers and building rockets in the unemployment statistics. Okay? So, the underemployed also understates unemployment. Okay. It really ought to be this, the 6%, but you know what? This is what gets reported. And the phantom unemployed. Well, I'll tell you what, I've known people do this, and I bet you have too. It's not very good. It is not a good thing to do, but you know what? Some people don't want to go back to work. They're laid off and they don't want a job. But you know what? To keep those unemployment benefits coming, they got to at least act like they are looking. They got to go through the motions. So they got to go have job interviews and stuff like that. And they deliberately sabotage them. They dress inappropriately. They do things that they know they won't get a job offer. And I've seen this done. I knew someone who got laid off starting her own business and went through the hoops for a while, working hard on her business, one of those unemployment benefits coming in. I bet you we can all tell stories about that, someone who did this. So what's going on here? Well, here's the unemployment rate. It's 5%. And they get laid off, which, and if they're genuinely looking for a job, it's this. It goes up to 6% because the labor force stays at 100. But what is the unemployment rate really? What's really happening here? It shouldn't be this. The bottom line is what really happened, what really ended up happening is you dropped out of the labor force, right? You're done. You're not really in the labor force anymore. So you have to be in the labor force to be unemployed. So this is the real situation, and we're back the actual unemployment rate, yeah, it has fallen, but the official numbers are this. Because you keep saying, if you're contacted by the BLS, yeah, I'm looking for a job. I'm looking for a job. So this is the number, these are the numbers recorded. This is the reality. So the phantom unemployed, it overstates unemployment. So all this makes measuring unemployment very difficult. So, and what is also difficult is determining what is considered full employment. What is considered a fully employed economy? Well, it's not zero. Okay, the unemployment rate will never be zero. Even during World War II, with everybody working to support the war, but just about everybody who could, it never did reach zero. Okay, it got down to like 1%, but it'll never reach zero. And here's why. We've got to look at the different kinds of unemployment. So, here we are, types of unemployment. Well, let's start with seasonal. I'm not sure, this one I don't think it's even in the book, but that's a kind of unemployment. We've got seasonal unemployment. Sure, ski resorts in the summer, a lot of the employees aren't employed anymore. Some stay on because they have some summer activities, but in the winter, contractors often lay off some of their employees in the winter. So these are kind of seasonal things that go on, and we can expect that every year. So that's one type of unemployment. Frictional. Okay. Frictional unemployment. Well, frictional unemployment really is not a bad thing necessarily. First of all, what it is, in a nutshell, it's the kind of unemployment when you're between jobs. Okay? So in this situation, this is when there's enough jobs out there. There are plenty of jobs. The jobs exist. And you've got people who can perform the jobs. So the jobs exist. There are people out there who can perform the jobs. And the period is relatively short period. Relatively short period of time. What it is it's just going to take some time for the employee, the person looking for the job, and the employer looking for the employee to find each other. That's frictional unemployment. So, yeah. If this makes you match up better, if some frictional unemployment actually helps people find better jobs for which they're more suited, and therefore more productive, that's a good thing. I mean, that's a good thing. Frictional unemployment. We're always going to have some frictional unemployment because you're always going to have people between jobs. So, for example, let's say you're the rocket scientist again, and you're laid off from your job, so you are unemployed, but you've got 5 offers on your desk. You're just trying to figure out which one you want to take. BLS calls you up. You're working? No. Got laid off. You looking for work? Yeah, I'm looking. You're unemployed, right? But you've got 5 offers on your desk. You just haven't decided which one you want to take. So yes, you're unemployed. You are frictionally unemployed. Okay. Now, structural unemployment. You know, my writing isn't that bad when I write it in advance, but when I do it while I'm recording, and it's because I can't talk and write at the same time. Structural. Structural unemployment is when the jobs exist and there are workers who want the jobs, okay? Workers available. They want the jobs, so there's jobs, there's workers available who want the jobs, but they don't match up. Somehow they don't have the right skills. For example, that kind of thing. They just, you've got a bunch of high-tech jobs and you've got a bunch of cement workers who are unemployed, and they just don't match. So we've got some structural unemployment. That's not the only kind of structural unemployment. We'll talk about some other in a minute, but that's the gist of it. And our solution, policy solution, has been to retrain. Help workers in industries. Let's say an industry just got killed off. High tech came in and killed off some industry. We're going to help people retrain for the new jobs, for the type of jobs that are out there. And that's why I say the greatest skill you can learn from college or any time at some point in your life, the greatest skill is to learn how to learn independently. Just know how to get a book and read it and figure stuff out. That is a tremendous skill all in its own. And there is cyclical. Cyclical unemployment. Okay, back when just before we started the productivity chapter, I gave you this whole song and dance about the business cycle, expansions and recessions. Well, here it is. We got real GDP. Again, usually we just put GDP because it's always real GDP unless we state otherwise. Plotted over time, and we've got this business cycle. We've got the expansions here. And we got the recessions here, okay? And we have this trend line, or potential GDP. This is the long-term potential sustainable GDP. So, when the economy is in an expansion, unemployment's falling. When the economy's in recession, heading down, people are getting laid off. Unemployment is rising. That's what we mean by cyclical unemployment. It's unemployment that is a result of a downturn in the economy. So, here's some numbers for you. There are numbers. The trend line, I think I did talk about that before, is approximately 3% GDP growth. That seems to be our long-term sustainable GDP growth over the long haul. What's sustainable? 3%. Above that, we're a little bit in a boom, but probably can't be sustained. Below 3%, well, we're underperforming. We can do a little better. But there's an unemployment rate that's kind of, just as this cycle hovers around this long-term trend, there's an unemployment rate that seems to hover around it as well, affiliated with this long-term trend. GDP, potential GDP of 3%, is an unemployment rate called the natural rate of unemployment. So we've got our sustainable GDP of 3, our natural rate of unemployment that goes along with that is our natural rate of unemployment, and that is somewhere, not being real precise here, of about 5%, roughly, ballpark. It used to be considered to be 6% a while back. It keeps falling. It keeps on going down, what we consider the natural rate of unemployment. And the reason it goes down is because of what we're going to talk about right now, the determinants of the natural rate. Okay? What determines the natural rate? We know what the natural rate is. It's the rate, the long-term average rate during normal times, that kind of thing, just what is considered fully employed. Well, determinants of the natural rate of unemployment. Well, the natural rate of unemployment is comprised of, that's frictional unemployment plus structural unemployment. And you add those together and you get the natural rate. Now, when the economy is fully employed, there is no cyclical unemployment. No unemployment due to the business cycle. But there will always be, even when the economy is booming along, there will always be some frictional and some structural unemployment. That's what we call this natural rate as the sum of frictional and structural. We don't include cyclical here because there is no cyclical unemployment at the natural rate when the economy is going along at its normal, sustainable long-term pace. Okay, so let's take a look at the things that determine frictional unemployment. Technology. Wow. Okay, back in the old days, you wanted a job in Atlanta. You quit your job here, and now you want to find a job in Atlanta. You're sure you can get one, so you're going to just kind of vacation while you're doing it. How would you do that? How would you go about finding a job in Atlanta? Well, you'd subscribe to the Atlanta newspaper, Atlanta Constitution, and you'd have it sent up here, and you'd go over the want ads in the newspaper, and then you'd you would send a resume. You might call them up on the phone and ask them to send you an application in the mail, and you would send a resume in the mail, and then they would call you up, and then you'd go down there, and this takes a long time. And the unemployment rate the frictional unemployment rate stays high during this whole process. Now, how do you find a job in Atlanta? Well, you go onto some job site in the internet, some website, you fill out an application right then and there. And this can be done in a flash. So what happens to frictional unemployment as technology speeds things up, speeds up this process? It goes down. And the level of unemployment insurance, or unemployment, well, insurance / benefits, unemployment benefits. If unemployment benefits are really generous, let's say, well, let's go to an extreme. Let's say the unemployment benefits are you completely get your salary replaced. How big a hurry are you in to get a new job? Well, you're not. And you may not do it today. I'll look tomorrow. Tomorrow comes. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. The next day. I have friends in Germany, back in Fort Myers, where I used to live before here. There were a huge German population there, or at least German vacationers and population. Some of our best friends there were actually from Germany, and they actually had 6 nonstop flights every day to Fort Myers from Germany. So I learned a lot about Germany. In Germany, their unemployment benefits were so high. They according to these friends of mine, they said they'd give you an apartment, they'd give you tickets, all kinds of tickets to parks and events, and that. And you know what? It was so generous that some people decided that they didn't mind that lifestyle. And Germany was in a bit of a bind because of this. They had people leaving the workforce, being unemployed, and they, the others who were working and supporting these people weren't very happy about it, frankly. And I understand there have been some reforms. They're not as generous as they were, but if they're extremely generous, frictional unemployment is going to be quite high because nobody's going to be in a big hurry to get back to work. Now, let's go to the other extreme, survival of the fittest. There are no unemployment benefits, 0. You get a job or you starve. Now, how long do you wait to go looking for a job? You don't wait at all. You're out there looking all day, every day, frantically looking. So the level of unemployment benefits can raise frictional unemployment. This would increase frictional unemployment. Technological advances would decrease frictional unemployment. Structural unemployment. Well, there are 3 things. Structural unemployment, the best definition really is there are more people who want jobs than jobs available. So over there, it could be because they don't match up. It could be because the kind of jobs don't match up with the, like you got the unemployed cement workers, okay? There are more people who want jobs in cement than there are jobs available. So there's structural unemployment there in the previous example. Well, that's the bottom line. And there could be more people who want jobs and jobs available for a few reasons. One, the minimum wage can create structural unemployment. Unions can create structural unemployment. And then there are what we call efficiency wages. Efficiency wages. Okay, Well, let's knock these out one at a time. Let's scroll down here. And we talked about the minimum wage already. Now, when we're talking about the minimum wage, well, that's a W because we're talking about labor. Wages are the price of labor and the quantity of labor. Okay. Here's the supply of labor. Here's the demand for labor. Here is the equilibrium wage. At this wage, the quantity supplied of workers equals the quantity demanded of workers. And therefore, what do we have? Everybody who's looking for a job has a job. No structural unemployment. The jobs and the number of people who want jobs match up. Now, this is only for when we talk about minimum wages causing structural unemployment, we're talking about a binding minimum wage, meaning the minimum wage is above equilibrium. Okay, if a minimum wage is down here, what is that going to do? Well, the market's going to give you this wage. If the minimum's below the market wage, it's as if it doesn't exist, right? The minimum wage has to be in the way. It has to be a barrier for the equilibrium wage to be reached. There's no barrier here. Okay, wages can go down to here, but they're going to stop here at equilibrium. Okay? So this minimum is non-binding. It's like it's not there. Okay, so let's say the minimum wage is up here. So what's going to happen? Here's the equilibrium wage, but government says that's not high enough. That's not going to do it. So with the new higher wage, quantity demanded falls from here to here. Not as much labor is going to be in demand. What are firms going to do? They're going to automate. They're going to be increasing their automation. They are going to cut people's hours. The management's probably going to work more. You know, there's all kinds of things that are going to go on. But the quantity demanded labor will fall. It may not fall immediately. Okay, so when you talk about minimum wage, you got to talk about short term and long term. In the short term, they're kind of stuck, right? I mean, you can't immediately make this switch. But if you know it's coming, like right now, the $15 minimum wage is coming, they say. And you know what? In some places, that's going to cause structural unemployment. In other places, it won't. Depends on the cost of living. So that's... You can't just have the same minimum wage everywhere in the country. Okay, so though politicians, some of them don't seem to understand that. But anyway, and what's going to happen to the quantity supplied? Well, that's going to increase. Where does that come from? Well, you've got students, full-time students, who are willing to go to school full-time if this is all they can get at McDonald's. But wait a minute. Maybe I'll go to school part-time and I'll work part-time at this new higher minimum wage, okay? You've got homemakers and moms, you know, home with the kids. And... want to be with the kids at this wage, but you know what? At this wage, well, maybe I'll drop the kids off at grandma's and I'll go make a few bucks. So you've got people who weren't interested in working at this wage who are at this wage. And so you've got the quantity supplied of workers increasing. You've got the quantity demanded decreasing. And what is that difference called? The difference between quantity supplied and quantity demanded, that is called unemployment. Okay, so You've got some unemployment there. You've got more workers who want jobs than are jobs available. More specifically, that is structural unemployment. So a binding minimum wage will increase structural unemployment. Well, let's talk about unions now. Unions used to be a bigger deal in the U.S. Here's the supply of labor. Here's the demand of labor. We're talking about different kind of labor, really. Typically, unions are when high-skilled labor joins together and bands together. And unions get a special exemption, antitrust exemption. You know, if companies band together, and they'll get taken to court by the Justice Department for collusion. But union labor, an exemption is granted, and it's considered, difference in power, where workers don't have the same power as firms have. So they consider that to be okay to collude or band together. And instead of, back before unions, I could threaten all I want and say, hey, you give me a raise or I'm going to quit. And they'll say, when they're done laughing, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But if all of you say, give us a raise or we'll all quit, well, now they're listening, right? So now they're listening. So, or go on strike is what usually happens. So to the degree that you can threaten a strike, credibly threaten a strike, a union can bump up wages above the equilibrium. So let's suppose the business is concerned about a strike. So the union can actually extract a little premium over and above this wage. They can extract a premium. In other words, it's how much will the company pay to not have a strike? Because if you go on strike, they're going to lose money. They're going to lose money in lost production. So let's suppose that they're willing to pay up to there. Okay, give us this much. Give us this much here, and we won't go on strike. And the company says, well, it's going to cost us, but you know what? It's cheaper than them going on strike. So they can extract a higher than equilibrium wage. So what have we got? The same thing. Quantity supplied of workers. With the higher wage, who wants to work for that company now? Well, more. Okay, quantity supplied. Or work in general. I mean, they're going to come people are going to come out of the, who weren't in the labor force. They're going to come in. Quantity supplied to workers, quantity demanded may fall. So what do we got again? The same thing as the minimum wage. Gotten a little differently. This is from workers colluding together or banding together and using their power to extract a higher wage. Now, if they go for too much, what happens if they go for too much? The company's just going to let them go. And we've seen cases like that. And if we have some time, I think we'll watch a video that talks about a situation where that happened. And I know there was a situation out in California where the Safeway warehouse, the largest warehouse in the country at that time, big center, that's where all the orders for Safeway grocery stores were fulfilled, and they got it. They had a problem with the order selectors. They was such a big warehouse. I actually use this as an example in microeconomics as diseconomies of scale. But they had so many, it was so big, the workers, they could actually stop and climb back into the boxes and take naps. then this was killing productivity. It was unmanageable. The warehouse was unmanageable. It was so big. Well, enter computer technology. With the new computer technology, they were able to track. They would have an order that each order selector would fulfill, and the little cart. They go around with a pallet, and they'd go get a bunch of stuff from a particular grocery store. And based on where it was located and all that, they were able to program in there how long it should take to fill that order. And you had to be pretty good to do it. You had to be pretty good. I mean, you had to be experienced. You had to, move right along. And the union didn't like it. And they went on strike. And to make a long story short, the company hired a bunch of scabs who they could quickly train to do this. And they set all-time production records. So how anxious was the company, wanting to settle? They're getting all-time production records from this new technology. Well, they made the union an offer, they rejected it, and then later made them another offer that wasn't quite as good, and the union could figure out, where the writing on the wall was, and accepted it. So, anyway. So union power, sometimes it can work for them, and sometimes it doesn't work. But to the extent that the union can extract a little bit higher wage from the threat of a strike, that will result in a wage above equilibrium and structural unemployment. Okay, that brings us to efficiency wages. Efficiency, so let's put that in. Unions can increase in structural unemployment. Efficiency wages. This is when the company will deliberately pay higher than an equilibrium wage, higher than they need to pay. Henry Ford made this famous when he paid, I think it was $5 a day. We did this back when we did the CPI. It was double. It was double the going rate. Why did he do it? Well, to the extent that he was able to what he wanted to do is he wanted to attract the best workers. He had this assembly line. The thing is, he wanted to make it really painful if you lost your job. Okay, so if you're making $5 a day and your best you can do elsewhere is $2.50 a day, that's painful to lose your job. So you're going to work hard, right? You get this job, you're going to make sure you work hard because you want to make sure you don't lose it. So this is going to cut down also on absenteeism. If workers are absent all the time, the assembly line won't work. They had a team of workers and they needed everybody there to make this work. So Ford figured out, he decided, and the people thought Ford was nuts. They thought it was out of his mind. But what he wanted to do, he knew by offering a higher wage than the market was providing that he'd get a lot of applications and he would get the best workers would be applying. Now, this all assumes that you're able to differentiate, in advance who's the best worker and who's not. Sometimes they don't always get that right, but if you can attract more workers and determine who's the best, you're going to end up with the best workers, the most productive workers, the most dependable workers, because they're really motivated to work hard and not miss work. Well, that's what we call efficiency wages. Deliberately pay a higher wage and the same situation. Quantity supplied increases, quantity demanded decreases, and maybe we don't talk about elasticity in this course, but the elasticity of supply might be a little steeper there. But anyway, yeah, some unemployment there because you've got a lot of workers wanting to work there who maybe weren't even working before or in the labor force before, some of them. And yes, the difference is unemployment. And in developing countries, companies will do this as well because they've got to pay more. If they maybe they can get away with paying less, but their workers aren't healthy enough. They're not healthy enough to work hard. They want to pay them enough so they can have the nutrition they need to be strong and productive workers. So they might pay more than the going market for those reasons. So, all of those things increase structural unemployment. So, again, that will affect natural rate of unemployment. So, if you got high minimum wages, powerful unions, and efficiency wages, let's say you have all of those going, the natural rate of unemployment is going to be higher than if you don't have minimum wage. Well, Sweden, doesn't have a minimum wage. Unions are more congenial over there, the relationship between the firms and the unions. You're going to have a lower natural rate of unemployment. Okay,